Geronimo Stilton, The Search for Sunken Treasure. Read by Hosea Tong Ho. It all started with a lavender letter. Do you like the smell of lavender? I do. It's so relaxing. I guess that's why they spray the lavender oil at the restful rodent. That spa is my favorite place to unwind, but that's another story. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the letter. That morning I went to my office, and I found the letter on my desk. It was addressed to me, Geronimo Stilton. Oops, I almost forgot to introduce myself. I'm the publisher of the Rodents Gazette, the most famous newspaper on Mouse Island. Anyway, the envelope had a letter F on it. Lavender and the letter F. This could mean one thing. The letter must be from my dear Aunt Sweetfur. This is what the letter said.
Dearest Geronimo, I am coming to see you Wednesday morning. There is something we absolutely must talk about. Love and squeaks, Aunt Sweetfur.
I finished reading the letter and looked up at my calendar. I jumped. Wednesday. That was today. Just then the door flew open and Aunt Sweetfur skipped into my office. She was wearing a lavender dress with a frilly lace collar. She was carrying a lilac-tinted umbrella around her neck. She wore a silver heart-shaped locket. It contained a picture of her long-lost husband, Uncle Grayfur. That locket held another precious treasure, a whisker that my uncle had given her as a token of his dying love. Uncle Grayfur was a sea mouse. Almost 20 years ago, he sailed off to the Ratapaugus Islands. He was searching for a mysterious treasure. He never returned. Aunt Sweetfur was heartbroken. Can you blame her? Uncle Grayfur was her one true love. I mean, how many mice would pull out one of their own whiskers for you? Youch. My snout hurt just thinking about it. Maybe that was why I hadn't found my special soul mouse yet. I made a mental note to work on my fear of whisker loss. I was still thinking about my whiskers when Aunt Sweetfur wrapped me in a warm hug. The scent of lavender filled my nostrils. Oh, how I love Aunt Sweetfur. When I was a young mouselet, she liked to read me bedtime stories. Goldilocks and the Three Cats, Jack and the Cheese Sticks, Little Red Riding Hood. Aunt Sweetfur taught me just how exciting reading can be.
My dear nephew, it's been such a long time since I saw you,
she gushed.
You look so distinguished now. How wonderful.
Actually, I had just seen Aunt Sweetfur a few weeks ago. She lived in a mouse hole a few blocks away from my home. I'd invited her and the rest of the family over for dinner. But Aunt Sweetfur was getting old, and her memory wasn't what it used to be. Well, thank you, Aunt Sweetfur, I said, fluffing up my fur. Did I really look distinguished? I tried to catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window, but before I could check myself out, the door flew open. My cousin strolled into the room with a smug smile. Traps runs a thrift shop, cheap junk for less. When he's not at the store, he loves to cook, hang out with obnoxious friends and play tricks on me. Auntie, what's shaking? I got you letter, he squeaked, waving a lavender envelope, identical to mine. Do you need help? I'm your mouse, Aunt Sweetfur hugged him.
Dear nephew, it's been such a long time since I saw you. What sharp whiskers you have, and what nice shiny fur. I bet you are very popular with the females. How wonderful, she cooed.
Trap chuckled, flexing his muscles. You are quite right, Auntie. I have lots of sweethearts. Can't keep them away, he smirked. Yup. When it comes to charm, you either have it or you don't. And I have it. Poor Geronimo has zero charm. Zilch! Zip! Nada. It's not his fault, really. He was born that way. I was furious. How dare you poured from my ears? How dare you? I squeaked. Aunt Sweetfur had up her paw.
That's enough, she ordered. When will you two learn to get along? You have been fighting since you were both in high chairs.
I sighed. She was right. A picture of Missy Baby Trout whacking me over the head with a spoon flashed through my head. Just then, the door opened. My sister, Thea, the Gazette's special correspondent, roared into the office. Now was really fuming. How many times did I have to tell her not to ride her loud motorcycle inside? Thea switched off the engine and waved another lavender envelope in the air.
Auntie, thanks for your note. It's great to see you. What did you want to talk about? She squeaked.
Aunt Sweeper embraced her affection.
My dear, dear niece, it's been such a long time since I saw you. How pretty you look. And such a sport mouse, too. How wonderful.
She gushed. Thea grinned, twirling her tail.
Why, thank you, Auntie, she beamed. Did I mention I just won first place in the New Mouse City Cheetah Triathlon? I'm planning a trip to Wataska to go on a scale glacier.
I cleared my throat. My sister was gone all day if no one stopped her. So what if she went skydiving or won a marathon? I didn't care. Well, okay, maybe I was a little envious of Thea. The one time I tried to do a walkathon, I got so nervous that I fainted when they blew the start whistle. So, Auntie, can you explain why you asked us here? I said now, interrupting my sister's rambling. Aunt Sweetfoot closed the door. Well, the other day I began. I was tidying up Uncle Gopher's papers. Oh, what a mouse. She sighed and smacked a kiss on the heart-shaped locket. Then she went on.
As I was saying, while tidying up his papers, I found a journal. It told about a treasure on a ship that was sunk near the Ratabocus Islands. That's where Uncle Gopher was sailing to on his last voyage. He was looking for this treasure. Trap pricked up his ears. Did someone say treasure? He cried. Well,
You have certainly come to the right mouse, dear Auntie. I will handle this. As he spoke, he reached for the journal, but Thea beat him to it. Hold on, cousin. Our aunt needs all three of us to help him. Am I right, Auntie? Aunt Sweeper nodded. That's right, dear, she said. That's when she pulled out the ancient journal. This is what it said. Alas, what an unfortunate day this thing turned out to be. Today, Friday, February 13, 1713. At 13 hours, my ship, the Golden Ryan, had sunk 13 leagues northeast of Cream Cheese Island in the Talpagus region after hitting a claw-shaped rock. I, Admiral Don Seasnout, escaped with 13 members of my crew. Alas, the ship's precious cargo, a chest containing 13 diamonds as big as a mouse, now lies at the bottom of the sea. Signed, Admiral Don Seasnout 3.
Gopher left in search of this very treasure. He told me that if we could find it, we would be very rich, and he would never have to sail again. I miss him so, Aunt Super squeaked, wiping away a tear.
I squeezed her paw. Thea kissed her cheek. Trap burst out in a fit of sobs. Dear Auntie, I feel your pain, he choked. You could have been rich. You could have been rolling in the cheese. Can you tell my cousin loves money? Oh, I don't care about the treasure, Aunt Sweeper said.
But I do want to go to the Petalbicus Islands. I want to visit some places that my beloved Gopher saw on his last journey. Will you come with me?
Trap jumped to his paws. Say no more, Aunt Lou. I'm ready to scamper, he announced. The idea of finding a treasure had to put a sparkle in his eyes. My sister checked the calendar.
For you, dear Auntie, I'll cancel all my appointments, she declared. Everyone turned to me.
I had a ton of work to do. Plus, I absolutely hate sailing. But what could I do? When do we leave? I mumbled. Aunt Super tore the umbrella.
How wonderful, she sang.
Right then, the door flew open. My favorite nephew Benjamin raced into the room.
Uncle Geronimo, I brought you a drawing, he squeaked.
He handed me a piece of paper with a picture of a big yellow heart made of cheese.
Do you like it, Uncle?
I made it for you with these
new markers,
he explained. I beamed. Isn't he the most amazing little mouse? Oh, how I love my dear nephew. At that moment, he noticed Aunt Sweetper. He ran right towards her and hugged her.
Auntie! I didn't know you were here.
Aunt Sweetper kissed Benjamin on the tip of his nose.
Darling Benjamin, you are growing faster than a rat in a cheese shop. How wonderful, she squeaked.
Trap clipped his paws. Yes, well, I had to break up the love fest here, he muttered. But let's talk about this treasure. I quickly explained the story to Benjamin. Then I sent him down to look up the Ratalpagus Islands on the internet. In the meantime, I found a book on my shelf all about lost treasures. I pointed to one of the pages. Here it is, I said. I began to read aloud. Admiral Don Seasnout's ship, The Golden Rhine disappeared near Cream Cheese Island in 1713, at the time of the Great Cat War. It was one of the biggest ships of the time. It had 37 bronze cannons. It was last seen en route to Whiskers Landing, carrying 13 precious diamonds for King Charles Chittarama IV. No trace of the ship or its treasure has even been found. What a disaster! What a catastrophe! What a mystery! Did I tell you I absolutely love mysteries? Right then, Benjamin let out a cry.
Look at this, he exclaimed. This agency on the Taupigas Island rents out boats for a skipper. You can book a boat with an echo sounder. It's a special device to help locate objects underwater. Thea's eyes shone. I've got a great idea, she squeaked. I'll take pictures and Geronimo can write a new book. We'll call it The Search for Sunken Treasure. It will be a bestseller.
Trap was green with envy. Bestseller? Bishmaller, he grumbled. Aunt Sweeper patted his fur. You are a
Lovely cook, dear. Maybe you can cook for us, she suggested, sweetly.
That got my cousin going. He strutted around my office, waving his tail in the air.
True, true, true. I am a gifted chef, a genius in the kitchen, she boasted. I will prepare some Whiskers-looking good delicacies. How wonderful, squeaked Aunt Fur. A minute later, I felt a small tug on my sleeve. Uncle, can I come too?
Benjamin whispered. Our trip would be very long. It would be tiring. It would be no place for a little mouse.
Oh, thank you, Uncle Geronimo. You're the best. My nephew cried.
Did I mention I'm a pushover when it comes to my dear sweet nephew Benjamin? Next morning at dawn, we all met at the airport. My sister Thea checked out her plane. Yes, my sister has her pilot's license. She also has her own pink plane decorated with flowers. Now she piloted the side of the aircraft with a loving paw.
All aboard! We're ready to hit the sky,
she announced. Aunt Sweeper squealed with joy.
How wonderful, she exclaimed.
My head began to pound. Did I mention I hate flying? Thea radioed the control tower.
This is Princess, ready for takeoff. I'm heading south towards the Taupigas Islands.
The engine roared to life. My whiskers began to twitch.
You know, Auntie, I can do all sorts of tricks on this plane, Thea squeaked. Want to see some? Oh, of course, dear. How wonderful.
Aunt Sweetfoot cried. My paws began to shake. Thea, please. You know I have a weak stomach. I tried to protest, but my sister just laughed.
Hang on there to your tail, she advised, reviving the engine.
Oh, why did my sister love to torture me? I was a good big brother. I never picked on her. I never teased her. Well, there was that one time she popped up on her fur for the junior prom. She looked like a hamster gone berserk. I was still thinking about it. Thea's bad fur day when the plane began to roll. Then it did a loop. Then it did a dive. Then it spun around and around and around in a loop.
How wonderful!
Aunt Sweetfur squeaked cheerfully. Boring, Trap mumbled. Amazingly, Benjamin had fallen asleep. As for me, well, I was not a pretty sight. My face had turned green and I had used all my air sickness bags. 10 torture hours later, we landed. I crawled out of the plane.
Are you all right, dear?
Aunt Sweetfur asked me.
You're looking a little pale.
I tried to answer, but I was too weak. He's fine, Aunt Lou, Trap smirked, clapping me on the back. Jerry Berry just loves to fly, don't you, Cousin Kins? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shriek. I wanted to tie Trap's tongue up in a knot so he could never squeak again, but I had no strength left. Just then, a sun-tanned rodent strode up to us. You must be the Stoughton family, he said. We've been inspecting you. The mouse introduced himself. His name was Scamper Skipperpaws. He was the captain of the Queensy Ratsy, the boat we had rented. We're ready to cast off, he said, pointing to a cheese-colored boat floating at the dock. I moaned silently. Did I mention I hate boats? Maybe I could wait for you here, I suggested. I spotted a hotel near the harbour. It wasn't too fancy. It wasn't too shabby. And best of all, it wasn't floating on the water.
But, nephew, don't you want to see where your Uncle Grayper disappeared?
Aunt Sweetfur murmured. Actually, I didn't. After all, my uncle was lost at sea. He could have drowned in a hurricane or been swallowed by a ferocious sea monster. I was ready to hit the hotel when Trap shoved me on board. "We all know you hate boats, Jerry Tails," he smirked. "But it's time for you to face your fears. That's right, you need to get your snout out of the encyclopedia and start seeing the world." I was fuming. So what if I loved to read my Encyclopedia Britannica once in a while? Okay, maybe I read it every day. Can I help it if I love to read? I shot Trap a look. He was right about one thing. I hate boats. The Queen Ratsy crew was made up of 3 mice. Scamper Skippy Paws was the captain. Molten Muscle Mouse was the second mate. And Tiny Tunes was the ship mouse. Molten had a droopy moustache. He loved flexing his muscles and staring into the pocket mirror. Tiny loved to sing from dawn to dusk. He strummed away on a beat-up guitar and croaked our sailor songs. And I mean croaked. That rodent sounded worse than a mouse caught in a glue trap. Needless to say, it was a long journey between Tiny's screeching and my seasickness. I almost jumped overboard, but finally on the evening of the second day, we dropped anchor at Puerto Rato. I was feeling awful. My stomach was doing flip-flops every time the boat rocked. My snout was burned from the scorching sun, and a swarm of hungry mosquitoes had decided to make camp under my fur. Oh, why had I agreed to come on this torturous trip? Right then, my Aunt Sweetper appeared by my side.
"Are you having fun, dear?"
she asked. Me? I nodded. What else could I say? No, I'd rather stick needles in my eyes. I'd rather pull out all my fur. I'd rather run naked through the street of Cat's Cove City. Of course, the others were having a blast. Tiny was playing his guitar and screeching away. "Rodents, keep your loved ones near. Once pirate cats roamed around here. They clanged their swords and searched for treasure. The evil ways you could not measure. So watch your tails, these cats are real. They're watching to make you into a meal." I shivered. Why did Tiny have to sing such scary songs? They were always about pirates, or skeletons, or ghosts. I preferred the oldie but cheesy tunes myself. "How about a little cheddar boogie?" I suggested. As usual, no one was listening to me. My cousin Trap jumped on a long bench. He was kicking his paws, dancing to the music. "Ole, ole, 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 ole," he shouted, clasping a fork between his teeth. Then he pulled my aunt onto the bench.
"How wonderful!"
she squealed as Trap twirled her around. When he was done, he took a bow. Everyone clapped and cheered. "What a skill! What talent! What a show-off!" "Are you taking notes for your book, Geronimo?" Trap smirked. I rolled my eyes. If it were up to my cousin, he would be the main character in all of my books. 2 minutes later, Trap disappeared into the galley. He returned carrying a plate of beans covered with cheese. He offered my aunt a sweet for a taste. "What do you think of my latest masterpiece, Auntie? I call it Trap's Spicy Bean Bonanza," he said. Aunt Sweetper nibbled into a tiny spoonful.
"Yum!"
she declared, reaching for more. Just then, I heard a low growling sound. Was it a mouse eating shark? Was it a slimy sea monster? Was this how it would all end? Then I realized it was my tummy. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I was dying to dig my paws into Trap's bean dish, but I was worried. You see, spicy food doesn't always get and agree with me. Still, Aunt Sweetper seemed fine. I grabbed a spoon. If it's safe enough for a little old lady mouse, it's safe enough for me, I told myself. I took a tiny taste. I didn't feel a thing. I mean, not one thing. I couldn't even feel my tongue in my mouth. Cheese niblets, Trap's spicy beans had killed my taste buds. And suddenly, I felt as my whole tongue was about to explode. My glasses fogged up. Steam poured out of my ears. I tried to squeak, but no sound came out. I grabbed the nearest jug of water and poured it down my throat.
"This is spicy sauce. It's simply delicious, isn't it, Geronimo?"
Auntie Sweetper squealed happily. One thing you should know about my aunt, she doesn't notice much. Once I got my tail stuck in a bottle of ketchup, I had to wear the bottle around for a week before my uncle Handy Paws was able to get it off. Aunt Sweetper never said a word.
"Ahem."
"Yes, Auntie, it's delicious," I choked, fanning my tongue. Trap smirked. He filled my plate to the brim. "Eat up, Geronimo," he sneered. "You need a little spice in your life, and my spicy bean bonanza will do the trick. In fact, why don't you put the whole recipe in your book? First, you need 3 tons of red hot chili peppers. I felt faint. Red hot chili peppers. No wonder I couldn't feel anything. The last time I ate hot chili peppers, I got so hot you could roast marshmallows on my fur. Oh, why did I agree to come on this torturous trip? The next morning at breakfast, Thea studied the map of the ocean surrounding the Rottalpigus Islands.
Well, this explains why no one has ever fished out this treasure, she said. You see, the ocean is very deep in this area, and the current is very strong. If you don't know where the ship went down, it would be impossible to find the wreck. Luckily for us, we have Admiral C. Snout's logbook. We all agreed we were very lucky, especially Trap.
Any mention of the word treasure sent him into an excited frenzy. I'm telling you, it was like the cheese had finally slipped off his cracker. He started doing cartwheels up and down his neck, singing, "I'm going to be rich," at the top of his lungs. Around lunchtime, we pulled into a port. We needed food, fuel, and water. I was just happy to get off the boat and away from the wacko cousin. I took Benjamin on tour for an old fortress, while Thea went to buy water. Meanwhile, Trap said he would pick up the food. An hour later, we returned to the boat. Well, everyone except Trap. That is, I finally discovered him sitting at the counter of the year-old Sea Cat Diner. He was stuffing his snout with cheesy clam chowder and chatting with some sailors. "Yes, sirree, mateys. We are off looking for treasure. I'm just a genius mouse to find it. The name's Trap 1T 1P, he boasted. I groaned. When would this mouse ever learn to keep his mouth shut? I ran up to him. "Shh! You blabbermouth! No one can know about the treasure," I whispered. He rolled his eyes. "Hey, friends, my lamb brain Cousinkins here says the treasure is supposed to be a secret. Is he paranoid or what? We've got to skedaddle. Sayonara!" he yelled as I yanked him out of the door. We left the diner and headed back to the boat. Trap chatted the whole way. Did I mention he loves to talk? I was thinking of stuffing my tie in his mouth to make him stop, but I decided against it. I love my tie too much. When we got back, I told Thea what happened. She threw a fit.
"You can't be left on your own for a single moment,"
she shrieked. "Well, excuse me for talking with some new friends," Trap yelled back. Thea grabbed his tail. Trap pulled her ears. Pretty soon, the two of them were going at it like two boxers in the rat ring. Aunt Sweet was sighed as she separated them.
"Ah, you two are like mold and cheese. You never get along," she muttered.
We sailed all night. The next morning, we dropped anchor in the Bay of Cream Cheese Island. Thea did a few calculations. While according to Admiral C. Snout's logbook, the ship sank in this area, she said. Just then, Benjamin gave a shriek. He was peering at the horizon through a pair of binoculars. "Look, over there is a claw-shaped rock," he cried. Immediately, Trap broke out into a mad series of cartwheels. But this time, no one stopped him. I guess we were all getting excited now. Thea ordered the captain to turn on the electronic echo sounder. Our search had begun. "Don't get excited, Thea," warned Captain Skipper Paws. "Searching the ocean is a big job. It may take longer than you think." For 2 whole days, our boat kept up the search. I was beginning to get worried if it took a whole week to find the sunken ship, or maybe a month, or maybe forever. This was no place for a seasick newspaper mouse. Headlines flashed before my eyes. Stilton, stuck at sea, never to return. Newspaper mouse gives up cozy life on land for terrifying trip on floating piece of wood. On the evening of the second day, I sat next to Aunt Sweetfer. I was feeling depressed.
"Ah, this pink sunset is so romantic. Just think, nephew, my beloved Graper was sailing under this very same sky 20 years ago," she said with a sigh. A tear rolled down her face. "Then he disappeared from my life forever."
Talk about kicking a mouse when he's down. I was more depressed than a sewer rat lost in the desert. At that very moment, I noticed a boat floating near us. While it wasn't just floating near us, the boat seemed to be following us. I shuddered. Something told me the rodents on board weren't looking to borrow a cup of sugar. Finally, on the third day, it happened. The echo sounder picked up something big under the boat. Thea switched on the magnetometer.
"Yep, that's something metallic down there, all right,"
she squeaked. We were all very excited. "Who's going to dive?" asked Captain Skipper Paws. Thea couldn't get into a wetsuit and oxygen tank fast enough.
can't wait to get some pictures of the wreck,
she exclaimed. Who wants to come with me? Trap tried on a pair of slippers. Perfect! Just like me, he declared. Then he waved a flipper in my direction. What about you, Geronimoid? Want to join us? He asked sarcastically. I cringed. Join them? Me? In the deep, dark, dangerous ocean? With the sharks and the poisonous jellyfish? Not on your life. Ahem. Well, I think it would be best if I stayed here to look after Aunt Sweetfoot, I murmured. Of course, Aunt Sweetfoot would not hear of it. Yes, well, I've been meaning to help Benjamin with those notes, I tried, but nephew grabbed my paw. Don't worry, Uncle, about those notes, Uncle, he squeaked. Anyway, I have a great idea. You can talk into this walkie-talkie. I'll record everything. You can tell us all about the sunken ship. What could I do? With a shaky pause, I put on a diving suit, a mask, a pair of slippers, and an oxygen tank. I looked ridiculous. I'm much more of a suit and tie kind of mouse. Good luck, Uncle Ben, Benjamin whispered. Before I could reply, Trap pounded me on the back. Suddenly, I was tumbling snout first into the water. Splash! I was scared out of my wits. But when I opened my eyes, I saw the most amazing sight. I felt as though I was floating in a glass of sparkling water. Schools of colorful fish swam all around us. Pink, blue, and red. Coral reached out from the ocean floor. A mother sea turtle passed by, carrying her babies on her back. Is everything all right, Uncle Geronimo? I heard Benjamin's voice. It's breathtaking, I replied, and it was. Why had I been afraid of such a fabulous place? Just then I spotted something not so fabulous. It was an enormous fish with whiskers. Slimy whiskers. It was the same fish face I'd seen in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Catfish, I shrieked. I was so scared my eyes nearly popped into my mask. Then I realized that someone was by my side. It was Trap. He shook a paw at the catfish, and he steered me away from it. The fish watched us go with a strange look on its face. I couldn't quite tell what it meant. Can fish laugh if they can? This one was definitely laughing at us. I didn't care. I was never so glad to see my cousin before. I would have hugged him if we didn't have so much diving gear on. Then I remembered he was the one who pushed me into the water in the first place. Oh well, I guess now we are even. The water turned cold and dark. I was keeping an eye on Thea, who was surging ahead of us. All of a sudden, she began waving her paws. Then she pointed to something in front of her. And there it was. A dark shape emerged from the depths like some mysterious sea monster. At last, we had found the ship. I was so excited I forgot to be afraid. Slowly, we followed Thea into the wreck. I was surprised to see it looked like it was in perfect condition. A row of cannons was mounted on each side of the ship. Under a layer of seaweed, I caught a glimpse of a faded inscription, the Golden Rind. A beautiful wooden figurehead hung at the ship's bow. It was a female mouse with wings. They say figureheads are supposed to protect a ship from danger. I stared into the mouse's face. She was still smiling. I guess no one had told her she hadn't done a very good job. Just then, I noticed Thea, warning me to be careful. That's when I realized the wreck wasn't light at the bottom of the sea. It was balanced on top of a huge rock. Yikes! I hoped it wasn't planning on sinking into the abyss with us in it. What a nightmare to be buried at sea. Just think of how it would be, and how dark it would be. Not to mention how soggy your fur would get. I shivered as we carefully made our way into the ship. First we passed through a room of corridors of pots and pans hanging from the ceiling. It must have been the ship's galley. Trap picked up a pan and pretended he was cooking something. I clutched my stomach. Just thinking about one of my cousin's craziest concoctions made me feel sick. In another room, a row of large barrels lay upside down from the walls. At one time, they were probably filled with gunpowder. Just then, I noticed something sparkling on the floor. I picked it up. It was a gold doubloon. I quickly hid it from my cousin. I didn't want him getting too excited underwater. He might use up all of his oxygen in his tank or something. I sneaked another peek at the doubloon. It sure was shiny. I decided I would give it to my Aunt Sweetfoot as a memento of our trip. We continued swimming. Finally, we reached a small cabin. A brass plaque hung over the door. It was terribly tarnished, but I managed to clean it with my paw. It read, Admiral Don C. Snap III. So this was the captain's cabin. I felt so honored to be standing, oh wow, floating there. Just then, Thea spotted a mysterious-looking trunk. We managed to open it. It was full of gold doubloons. A smaller box contained 13 diamonds as big as a mouse's fist. We had found this treasure. At that very moment, I realized there was something very wrong. Two shadow figures peeked out from my back in the ship. No, they weren't sea monsters. They were two evil-looking rodents. I gulped. Why were they spying on us? The two rodents weren't moving, probably because they were too busy watching every move. It was giving me the creeps. Theo pointed to the surface. I nodded. Okay, it was time to go. We'd have to come back for the treasure chest. Of course, we had to swim out very slowly. Did you know that's an important rule in scuba diving? As we swam, I glanced back. The two rodents were still following us. When we finally reached the surface, I was shivering. No, I wasn't shivering from the cold. I was shivering from fear. Benjamin and Aunt Sweetfur stared down at us with worried expressions.
Everything is all right,
my sister squeaked. No sense getting their tails in a twist just because mine was tied up in knots. But as we pulled ourselves on board, I realized something else was wrong. Another boat was anchored right beside ours. I took off my mask so I could read the name. It was called the Dirty Rotten Rodent. 2 seconds later, creepy mice who had been following us climbed aboard our ship. The rodents took off their diving suits. They sneered at us. Then they burst into evil laughter. Cheese niblets. Those two could use some serious dental work. Talk about dirty rodents. I'd never seen such rotten yellow teeth. Hadn't they ever heard of a toothbrush? One of them was short and round with hard, mean-looking eyes. He had tiny glasses and a short tail. The other was big and beefy with wiry fur. He wore a red and white striped t-shirt that barely covered his big hairy belly. A tattoo of a cat with drawn claws decorated one bulging muscle. A heart with an arrow through it decorated the muscle on his other arm. Who are you? What do you want? I squeaked nervously. I hope you couldn't see my paws shaking like a pair of maracas. The big mouse sneered. The name's Greedy Whiskers, the whisk to my friends. And this is my associate, Heartless Hairball, otherwise known as Harry, he said. Then he laughed cruelly. As for you, pal, I'll think I'll call you Cheese Brain. I was furious. I was fuming. I was hotter than my cousin's spicy bean bonanza. I wanted to tell this mouse a couple of things. Firstly, I'm not your pal. Secondly, don't call me a cheese brain. But I kept my mouth shut. First off, I'm not much of a fighting mouse. I love peace, love, and understanding. And secondly, I was scared silly. So, why did you follow us? I asked. The whisk grin spread from ear to ear. Yikes. He looks like a jack-o'-lantern with those rotten teeth. We were at the diner. We had heard your friend say he was searching for treasure. And we love treasure, don't we, Harry? He squeaked. I glanced up at Trap. He looked like he was about to explode. My cousin wasn't going to hold back. Hey you, Chitterface, subspecies of super rat. If I get my paws on you, I'll ratomize you, he shouted. Whiskers whirling, the other mouse just kept sneering. He made a farewell gesture with his paws and squeaked. So long, Cheese Brain. Catch you later, Ratomizer. We'll be back tomorrow to take that treasure. The boat moved away and dropped anchor about 10 yards from us. I guess they were settling for the night. Meanwhile, a strong wind began to rise. Dark clouds rolled in. Lightning filled the sky. I wasn't worried about Greedy Whiskers and Harry anymore. Within minutes, the storm hit us. Waves rocked the boat back and forth like one of those awful rides at the Wild Whiskers water park. Did I mention I get seasick? We hid below deck, waiting for the sea to calm down. The waves grew higher and higher. My stomach began to churn away. I felt like a fairy washing machine on a super spin cycle. I peered inside the galley. Trap was stirring a big pot of fish fondue. Let's see. A little Swiss, a little cheddar, a little shrimp, a little cod, and of course, a little red hot chili sauce, he muttered softly. I covered my nose with a handkerchief. The smell was nauseating. Oh, Why couldn't my cousin stick with something simple, like grilled cheese sandwiches or even a nice cheddar log? For a minute, I thought about making a suggestion, but changed my mind. Trap thinks he's a world-class chef. He would squeak my ear off if I interfered. After a disgusting dinner, we climbed into bed.
Tomorrow we'll dive at dawn. We must be the first to recover the treasure,
Thea said. My Aunt Sweeper wrung her paws.
Oh, my dear, please be careful,
She pled.
Don't worry, Auntie, we'll be fine.
Thea reassured her. But I was worried. No, I was more worried. I was downright terrified. The night dragged on and on. I didn't sleep a wink. I kept thinking about the dangerous dive the next day. Plus, the boat was pitching up and down on the waves like some crazed rat on a trampoline. My stomach was a mess. Still, I couldn't tell if it was due to the churning ocean waves or Trap's awful cooking. This wouldn't be the first time I got food poisoning from one of my cousin's revolting concoctions. At 5 o'clock in the morning, the waves stopped crashing. How strange. It was like a magician had waved a magic wand. Now the whole sea was calm. We put our diving suits on. I closed my eyes and took the plunge. Before I hit the water, I heard Benjamin's voice.
Look out! They're right behind you,
He yelled. I glanced around. Ranted rat hairs, the two mice from the other boat were after us. Hey, Cheesebrain, they shrieked, waving their paws in the air. I don't know what to do. Keep going, turn back, curl up into a ball and sob like a newborn. I was still deciding when I heard another shout. Shark! Shark! Someone squeaked. Just then, I saw it. A shark's fin was weaving its way across the waves. It was headed straight for Greedy Whiskers and Harry. I chased him into a little inlet. They flung themselves on shore. I chuckled. It looked like those two would be spending the night on land. I was still giggling when I saw a shark turn around. I watched in horror as it headed in my direction. Holy cheese. I swam back to our boat in record time. It was amazing. I hoped my sister was watching. All of a sudden, a loud splash interrupted my thoughts. I looked down. The shark swam up towards our boat. What happened next? I couldn't tell you. I had fainted. When I came to, Trap was standing over me. Don't be such a scaredy mouse, Jeremiah, he said, waving the shark fin in the air. It was just me. I rolled my eyes. I should have known. Oh, why did I come on this horrible trip? After a few minutes, my sister and I dove into the water again. We swam down to the wreck, found the captain's cabin, and opened the chest. Thank goodness the treasure was still there. We attached the chest to a long chain, and the crew of the Queen Ratsy began to pull it up towards the surface. Higher, higher, higher. The chest dangled over the water. We swam after it. At last we reached the boat and climbed on board. Pull, 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 we cried. That's when I noticed the other boat approaching us. Rats. I guess Greedy Whiskers and Harry had found out Trap's trick. Now they were hot on our tails. Too late. The treasure's already ours, shouted my cousin from the deck. But the Whisk just sneered. Is that so, Cheesebrain? Then before you could say mozzarella balls, he tossed a hook that latched onto the chest. He began to pull the treasure towards his boat. We pulled towards our side, and they pulled towards theirs. Be careful, warned Aunt Sweeper. If you pull too much, you'll end up with no treasure. Too bad Aunt Sweeper was right. A split second later, we heard a sharp noise. The treasure's chest lid flew open, and a shower of gold doubloons and 13 giant diamonds rained down into the water. The Whisk jumped in after the booty, but he got tangled in a big clump of seaweed. Rat! Greedy Whiskers squeaked. Harry helped him back into the boat, and then began picking seaweed off him. Harry spread the seaweed out on the deck, and he began to roll around it.
Just what do you think you're doing, you fool?
Aunt Sweeper shrieked. The other mouse just kept on rolling. Wake up and smell the cheese, boss, Seaweed. Seaweed is a natural and healthy way to soften the fur. After a while, the two hoisted anchor and sailed away. They were still arguing with each other. We all got together to squeak about what to do next. Let's face it, those diamonds are history, Theo began. But we still need to explore the wreck.
We need more material for our book. I say we dive again tomorrow.
We all agreed. We all, except for Trap, who was too busy sobbing over the lost treasure. I took a pound of chocolate cheesy chews, 3 bags of cheddar popcorn, and large mozzarella milkshake to calm him down. The next morning we dove. Once again we made our way through the sunken ship. That's when I spotted a strange object. In the gallery, it was a huge cheese-colored pointed jar with two handles on the side. It had a cork stopped that was covered with yellow wax. Just then I remembered where I had seen the object before in my Encyclopedia Britannica. It was called an amphora. Ancient Greeks used amphoras to hold all different types of liquids. Together we carried the amphora up to our boat.
Did you find gold? Thea squeaked.
Did you find jewels? Benjamin cried.
Did you find any lace lackey? I accidentally dropped it overboard.
Aunt Super added. We laid the amphora on the deck.
Sorry, we didn't find anything,
Thea squeaked.
except for this old jar. It's called an amphora. It's not made of gold or precious jewels, but it's sort of interesting.
Trap rolled his eyes. Interesting? Shimmersting, he groaned. Oh, Master, how did you get to be such a dumbo? You can't write a book about a sunken ship without treasure. I chewed my whiskers. Was my cousin right? Would my next book turn out to be a flop? Just then Benjamin walked over to the amphora. Do you know what's inside this thing, Uncle? He said. I put my paw in the amphora. What was inside? Oil, vinegar, super sour pickles. My tummy flip-flopped. Do you like pickles? I don't. I tried to ignore my churning tumble as I examined the yellow-coloured wax in the amphora. It had a seal imprinted on it that showed a picture of a mouse fighting a cat. This was the coat of arms of King Chidamar IV. I was still staring at, sealing the wax, when I felt someone shove me aside. Well, what are you waiting for, Jerry Berry? My cousin squeaked. Before I knew what was happening, he whipped out a sharp knife and removed the stopper. What nerve! What impatience! What was this delicious smell? My whiskers twitched and began to drool. The yummy smell spread through the boat. Trap sniffed the jar. It's cheese, he announced. He sniffed again. Wow, that King Rachma really knew his cheeses. You mean Cheddar? I corrected him. My cousin waved a paw at me. Then he nibbled a tiny silver of the cheese. Cheddar Llama, whatever his name was. This stuff is first quality parmesan matured for more than 2 centuries. Here's your treasure, Jeroni Mama, he squeaked. I was going to mention that my name was not Jeroni Mama, but I didn't. I was too happy we had found a real treasure after all. It looks like our adventure was over. That night, the Queen Ratsy headed for home. As much as I hate boats, I have to admit, I was a little sad to go. The stars sparkled above our heads like diamonds in the dark sky. The ocean waves lapped gently against the sides of the boat. Maybe being a sea mouse wasn't such a bad thing after all. Well, as long as you stayed away from those scary catfish. Just then, my Aunt Sweet squeak broke into my thoughts.
Look at that falling star, she cried. How wonderful! Make a wish.
Without saying a word, she opened the locket she wore around her neck. The picture of Uncle Grayfur stared back at her. My heart ached for my dear sweet aunt. We love you, Auntie, I said. Then we all did a group hug. I could have stayed there all day, except Trap was standing on my paw, and my tail was twisted up by Aunt Sweet's umbrella. And my sister's perfume was making me gag. Don't you just love being part of a family? We decided to take a different route home. This way, we'll avoid a run-in with the 2 rodent rats. Captain Skipper Paws advised. We sailed along a stretch of sea where no ships ever went by. There was nothing much to see except water, water, and more water. Oh, and once in a while, we saw a shark. A real shark, that is. Holy cheese, sharks were scary. Suddenly, far away in the distance, we caught a glimpse of a very, very small island. It was no bigger than rock.
How strange,
Thea muttered.
It's not on the map.
Benjamin clapped his paws.
If it's not on the map, that means we're the first ones to discover it. Just like Christopher Columbus, he squeaked. Thea grabbed the binoculars.
She scanned the island.
I see 3 palm trees, a tiny beach, a waterfall, and 1 rock. I can also see a hammock hanging from 2 of the trees, and a tiny hut made of leaves.
A hammock? A hut made of leaves? My heart began thumping wildly under my fur. Cheese niblets! That means someone lives there! A castaway! I shrieked excitedly. My sister scanned the island once more. Then she gave a start. A mouse! I
see a mouse! He's waving a yellow handkerchief, she cried.
With a squeak, Aunt Sweeper snatched the binoculars from Thea's paws. "It's him!" she snouted. 2 seconds later, she had plunged into the water, fully dressed. Yup, she didn't even stop to take off her hat. Instead, she began mouse paddling towards the island at a record speed. We watched her astonishment. Who would have thought that our meek, mild auntie would have turned out to be such an impressive swimmer? Still, what if she got chased by a shark or caught in a strong current? "I'm right behind you, Auntie Lou," Trap squeaked, chasing after her.
Me too,
Thea squeaked, following Trap's lead. I stared at the water. I really wasn't in the mood to get wet. It was so nice and warm on the deck, and besides, I was having such a good fur day. Right then, I felt a tug on my paw. "Here, Uncle Geronimo," my little nephew said, holding up a sharp spear. "Use this to scare away the sharks." I took the spear, my teeth were chattering. But I jumped overboard anyway. What else could I do? I couldn't have my nephew thinking I was a scaredy mouse. Meanwhile, Aunt Sweeper soon reached the beach. She raced across the sand towards the castaway, paws outstretched. "Graper, my love," she squeaked. The mouse eyes were nearly popped out of his head. "Sweeper, my darling Sweeper," he cried. The 2 mice hugged each other tightly. I felt like I was watching the end of a romantic movie.
"Oh, my sweetie sweetums, you haven't changed a bit,"
Graper declared.
"You are even more beautiful than I remembered, and you're even more handsome, my Graper gravy baby,"
she crooned.
"Oh, my pookie pie berry face."
"Oh, my angel doll honey whiskers." The 2 went on and on. I wonder if one day I would meet someone and fall in love like that too. Someone who had eyes for me. Someone who I could tell my most private secrets to. As she had read my thoughts, Aunt Sweeper turned to us. "My
"Dearest family," she said. "As you can see, this is the real treasure, true love."
Ah, love. Yes, maybe falling in love really was the greatest treasure of all. Still, I wasn't sure if I'd want someone calling me Pookie Pie Fairy Face. We brought Uncle Grafer back to the boat. I settled in. Uncle Grafer told us a story. 20 years ago, I found a small wooden box washed up on the beach. It looks like the logboat of Admiral Don C. Snout III. Uncle Grafer began. I decided to go in search of what was left of the golden rind, but unfortunately, the ship sank during a terrible storm. My crew left the ship on a lifeboat, but I hung on till the last minute. I was the captain after all. A captain never abandons his ship. When the boat sank, I managed to cling to a piece of wreckage. I was tossed around the ocean waves like an acrobat at a big cheese circus. Finally, I washed up on this beach. It's a tiny island, but I was still able to survive for all these years on coconuts and fish. Aunt Sweeper kissed Uncle Grafer on the snout.
"Oh, my poor snuffle mouse. Yes, you must have missed a nice piece of cheese," she said, sighing.
Uncle Grafer kissed her back.
I miss you more than my sugar paws,"
he squeaked. We sailed home. Home sweet home. Oh, how I miss my precious new mouse city. When we arrived, everyone wanted to interview us. It turned out the Parmesan cheese we had discovered was the oldest cheese specimen ever found in the history of Mouse Island. Scientists, archaeologists, and cheese experts everywhere wanted to know the details of our amazing discovery. It was a priceless specimen, more precious than gold, than silver, was put on display at the New Mouse City Museum of all things cheesy. A plaque under the display read, "Generously donated by the Stilton family." Our book, The Search for Sunken Treasure, sold like cheddar pops on a hot summer day. A first-rate bestseller. Of course, the book was written by yours truly, and my sister added the photographs. I decided that we should all have our names on the cover. Aunt Sweeper, Benjamin, and yes, even my obnoxious cousin Trap. When Trap heard his name was on the cover of the book, he was so thrilled he started doing backflips all over my office. Did I mention my cousin is a little excitable? Not in the office? I protested, but as usual, my cousin wasn't listening. He kicked over the lamp post on my desk, he knocked over a stack of magazines, and he clobbered me right in the snout. "Not in the face," I muttered, then I fainted. When I came to, Trap was standing over me. He was holding an empty bucket in his paw. That's when I noticed I was soaking wet, and I was lying in a puddle of freezing cold water. "No need to thank me, cuz," Trap smirked. A snout full of cold water always gets you up and squeaking. 6 months later, I was back in my office, peacefully working away.
Well, actually, I wasn't really working away. I was actually reading the latest book in the Ratty Potter series. I was so excited I couldn't put it down. Just then, there were 3 knocks on my door. Before I could squeak, "Enter!" Thea, Trapped, and Benjamin rolled, strolling in. They were grinning from ear to ear. "Guess what, Geronimo?" Trap squeaked. "We won the Ratizer Prize for the best group of the year." It took a few seconds for Trap's announcement to sink. When it did, I fainted. I came to with another bucket of cold water in my snout. Compliment of you-know-who. But this time I was too happy to care. The Ratizer Prize. I could hardly believe it. It was the most important prize a journalist could receive. We were invited to a special award ceremony. It was Babby Mouse. Aunt Sweeper made the whole audience cry when she told them about finding Uncle Graper on a deserted island. Then, to mark the occasion, we each had a nibble of the cheese from Emperor. Yum. Afterwards, we all had dinner at Trap's place. Have you ever been there? He lives in an old subway train that he converted into a cozy mouse hole. We munched on pizza from the sliced wrap. And for dessert, Thea surprised everyone with a delicious apple pie covered with mounds of steaming hot cheddar. After dinner, I looked around the table and sighed. Uncle Graper and Aunt Sweetper were giggling like 2 lovesick teenage mice. Benjamin was doodling a picture with his markers. Thea was touching on her poor nail polish. And Trap was, well, I'm embarrassed to say, he was picking his snout. I rolled my eyes. Then I chuckled. Ah, it was good to be home.